Hi, Juan. It's so nice to meet you. I'm Bryce.
Hey, Bryce. How you doing?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me on today. It's truly a pleasure to be able to kind of see you and talk to you.
Well, as soon as I get my camera sorted out here, I'll have it sorted out. Hold on a second there.
We'll see
there
the boots.
Go.
There you go.
All right. There you are.
Wow. So I love those boots.
Well, actually, and you know, these are my, I cut part of the insole on my boots that I wear most of the time. And so I had to grab a backup pair, and my other ones are in having a repair done. I really like them. And so these ones here are ostrich, and I don't really like the snake or the crocodile and all that. So the ostrich is nice because it stretches nicely. And so I'm just breaking these in. You're the first show where I've used any boots other than my other boots ever in the whole entire world in an interview.
That is awesome.
This is an international first.
There you go.
That's awesome.
Well, should we jump straight into it? So
yeah, I already hit record, so I can edit out like the first part. You can go ahead and
the boots are good. Keep the boots in. That's fine. So.
I will. Yeah, I'm just gonna get me a little water to keep my voice from going there. So yeah.
There you go. Well, welcome everyone. So this is Tom Sidney Bushnell, aka Numbers from Psych.Club, and we've got a wonderful episode today in conjunction with Bryce Watson from Esoteric Atlanta, and we've got Mr. 107 in the house with us with these newly broken in boots. So Juan, it's a pleasure to have you, buddy, and Bryce, it's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a joy to be here.
Well, and I would say that the boots aren't quite broken in yet. You're the first show in the world where I've ever worn anything other than my other boots, and I had cut just a small place in the insole. I was out doing something over at one of the racing tracks, and I caught it on a piece of metal or something. So I got these temporarily while my other ones are being sent out to have a repair or something done. And so you're the first people in the world to ever see me in a different set of boots. It's almost like getting a fresh haircut. I feel, all new and fresh here.
We've just come out of lockdown here in the UK, get haircuts, and now we've got the fresh boots. One, I wanted to jump in terms of the numbers. So the gematria that we'll be doing mainly will be simple gematria, which is A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, D equals 4, etc. The order of the letter and the number come in the alphabet. So just for those viewers that are new to this, but I wanted to jump in and ask you, what is the meaning in terms of the numbers and maybe other meanings behind 107? Because I've got some numbers on the simple gematria I want to share with you after, but I wanted to hear it straight from the cowboy's mouth and get your take on your well-known name. So,
well, of course, in most forms of gematria, the 0 has no value. It has no meaning. So you drop the 0, and then beyond that, there's some private meanings I haven't really gone into in a public forum, and how those came to be. But what's interesting. Let me just say this.
Yeah.
There's two directions you can look at all the numbers before we ever get started into this. And that is, there's a matrix of numbers that appears to be natural. And for all the world, these things, it's amazing how numbers that are not manipulated will later come to be seen as having almost some kind of, there's an esoteric, there's a hidden, but somehow in the fabric of the universe, perfectly patterned matrix where the numbers, it's like it was meant to be. The other side of the coin is we have a certain amount of wizardry and magicianship where the numbers are imprinted and branded into things with the intent that by artificially manipulating the numerology, the numerics, in events, in names, in dates, that there is a branding that is attempted to be done. It's almost like there's a divine side that is outside the reach of man merely, or any entity but God himself. And then there is a attempt to manipulate the fabric of life and time to put an imprint that has certain branding and meaning. And these are the artificial constructs where dates and times are picked, planned, correlated, for example, to celestial events, the timing out through the cosmos of planetary crossings, intercepts, and that also have real physical physics behind them that affect emotions, energy, etc., in very real, scientifically provable ways. This isn't just totally, we want the alignments to occur because, the gods will be pleased. There is actual, real, trackable energy that relates to the other physics that isn't taught in the listed classes in universities, but is the other physics beyond the quantum and all that stuff. And so these real, trackable energies are crucial to these societies because they understand the physics, the underlying physics that have to do with energy and manipulation of social, interactions, constructs, etc. So is that a good starting point?
That's a real good starting point. Thank you. The numbers I've done on the simple gematria. So, like I said, A is the first letter, B is the second letter, C is the third, D is the fourth, etc. So, JUAN, JUAN, comes to 46, which comes to dove. You think of the sign of the dove in terms of Christianity. President Trump is born in 1946. He's born 14/6, so 14 June. So if you do 1 times 46, it's 46. I hear what you say about, you drop the zeros in some of the methods. So in the simple gematria, I always include the O's because O is 15. You've got 0, which is 64, but O is 15, which takes you, and you said about magic, so I thought that was on point because 61 takes you to miracle. So 46, 10 takes you to miracle, 61, 46 plus 15. Also takes you to casino, also takes you to Don Jr. And SAVIN, SAVIN, comes to 65, which comes to the number 7, comes to the number 15, comes to Kansas, comes to the word stay. I always talk about Christopher Nolan. I'm a big film buff, and he's a white hat director working closely with President Trump and Q, in my estimation, and understanding of his work and the numbers. But if you add all those together, it comes to 126. 126 is a very significant one because atomic silver is 47, which is John as well. Atomic gold is atomic number 79. 79 comes to super, comes to wonder, comes to mother. Add those together, it takes you to 126. So atomic silver and atomic gold is 126, which is 107. Also, that comes to the phrase Chinese elders. It also comes to the number. If you spell the number 45, you think 45th president. You think the suit of spades in the deck of cards is 45 as well, spade, singular. Also effect, like the domino effect and positive effect on things. But 45, so 40 is 84, and 5 is 42. Add those together, you come to 126. So you've got 45th president, you've got the spade, which is the most powerful, most spiritual suit in the deck of cards. And you mentioned as well, you said quantum, the word quantum. So you've probably heard this before, but your name, when you say it 107, people quite often hear 107, like 107. And you must have heard that hundreds of times. But 107, the number 107, comes to the plural version of Trump. So Trump is 88, add an S, which is the number 19, takes you to 107, which comes to quantum, comes to currency, it comes to military, it comes to Aquarius, it comes to the number 20, comes to Superman as well. So there's quite a lot in there, buddy. I thought you'd enjoy.
Well, and let me just add one thing.
Yeah.
You have parallel things that people have to remember. 107 is not the same as JUAN, and
No.
so
No.
O is not a number in that particular application. So you are correct on that. And I will add also that silver and gold in the monetary system, one interesting aspect of that most people aren't aware of, at the beginning in the early Olympics, gold was not first place. Silver was first place, and gold was second place. And that was later changed. And the issue with gold is divisibility and the ability to have enough quantity in order to be able to service transactions in large numbers. And so silver is much more available and easier to mint and move. It is heavier by volume for value, but it's a much more easily minted and easier to spread out in values that you can do transactions. And so that's why silver is actually the most suppressed and important of the metals for what's going to happen out into the future in the monetary applications. I could talk more on it, but I'm just you mentioned that. I thought I'd raise that for the benefit of your listeners.
That's super interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
When did they change it in the Olympics? When did they switch it?
It was done ancient times.
Okay.
And it had to do, the bankers that really started this trading, you'd get robbed if you had gold and silver. So you'd do deals and, use the Templars and like that to do these transactions. There was groups before that. But, when you think of goods being shipped across the world in that really ancient time, back to, say, the Babylonian time, even to the Sumerian times, they would do a little change up. And for a particular number of years, gold would be the preferred metal that people bringing merchandise to trade and get, metals, they preferred gold. Then the people, the banking people, if you will, in the background, they would say, no, we don't need so much gold. We got plenty of gold. We need more silver. And so all of a sudden, everybody that would be bringing goods would demand payment in silver. And so this change up back and forth meant that the bankers were making an advantage, not just on the goods that were traded, but by this switch over back and forth, silver and gold. And when they would change it up, they would get some piece of the action for conversion to the other preferred metal. And it was just kind of a game that they played in the background. These families have been at this for eons and back to the beginnings of society. And they know how to, make hay. The cats, they can skin a cat more than one way.
Yeah.
Yep. That's been one of the things that I love to do is research, and I love history. And I've been going through a lot of the missing books of the Bible, and realizing how everything that's going on right now is actually in the Bible. And this is literally seems to be a fight between the Canaanites and the Israelites since the very beginning of time. And it's all.
Well, let me just dive in. One thing you said something very important. I think it's very critical for your listeners to consider this. It's not just the biblical works. While we have been trained to accept that only the approved writings in the 66 books of the Bible, or if you're Catholic, including the Apocrypha, are the accepted writings in the Bible. Christ himself quoted from Enoch, Book of Enoch. Christ was raised in Egypt, and the library at Alexandria was there and had all of these important ancient writings. The book that I quote from quite frequently, The Lost Books of Eden, the history there is that when the descendants of Abraham, who is the father of the faithful in the Christian Jewish religions, Abraham went out and sojourned, called by God to go through this area that God was going to give him, that we now call the Holy Lands. And, this area with Israel and the Palestinians and all of these areas, that's where Abraham went and camped, sojourned, traveled in this ancient time. And God told Abraham that he would give everywhere he placed the sole of his foot for an inheritance. So he had to travel this land, walk that land, and then God was going to give it to him. And he said he would give it to his descendants, who would number as the sand of the seashore and the stars in the heaven for number, if you could count them. So this vast and unimaginable number. And so, but Abraham didn't have any kids. By faith, he trusted God, and eventually he had his child when he was an old man via Sarah, that was an old lady, and that became the tribes. Abraham's descendants, through Isaac and then Jacob, came to find themselves living in Egypt during a famine, and the younger brother Joseph, through this biblical story where he was sold into slavery by his own brothers, he ends up becoming Pharaoh's right-hand man, having interpreted a dream, and he becomes the most powerful man in Egypt under the authority of Pharaoh of Egypt. And when his family is there, Joseph has the family lore, the passed down verbal history of the family from Adam, when Adam and Eve left the garden, that was passed down through all the generations, all the way down to Abraham, Isaac, and then Jacob and his children. When they find themselves in Egypt, Egypt is this treasury of books and knowledge, ancient history from the world, as much as they could gather in. They were the library. And so Joseph had that verbal history recorded in Egypt. And that's part of that library. And it's the story from Adam and Eve when they left the garden, and those first 50 days, and then the generations afterwards. So that's not included in the biblical narrative. Yet, my personal interpretation, you could say, well, somebody changed something. It's been, changed in some subtle way. It doesn't match the numerological perfection that we do find in the books of the Bible have been passed down, in our generation, like Genesis. There's a numerical precision in every single letter, every period, every exclamation point or accent mark in that original writing, in the original Hebrew, that is so perfect that it's just incomprehensible as you look at this matrix of the numbers, the letters which have a numerical value in the books of the Bible. So you might say that the Lost Books of Eden don't have that, but they were recorded in a different language, in a different way than the books of Moses. That doesn't change, though, that from my perception, the incredible beauty, the important minutia of detail of what it was like for Adam and Eve coming out of the garden, or the story of Enoch having been caught up into heaven, and his observations aren't absolutely critical. And if you go to the recorded portions of the Bible from the things that Christ was reported to have said by the apostles, then that validates the value of these books for those who are of, some faith. Does that click for you?
Yeah, no, I've been reading all like that. I'm doing the book of Jubilee right now, which is very much, we're now into Jacob and Esau and the Edomites, and then Jacob going off and having his wives and the 12 tribes of Israel. So, and we've done a lot of the New Testament stuff as well, like the Gospel of the Holy 12 was one of I cried my way through that book that was missing from the Bible. And I do try to tell people, there's a lot that's 2,000 years ago. There's a lot that is out there that is just as valid that we didn't get at Vacation Bible School, So,
let me just add this. Let me interject one thing. King James Bible. King James was not a believer. He was Masonic. He had certain other beliefs, but there had to be some unity within the kingdom. And of course, the Protestant version of the Bible, Anglican version of the Bible, has 66 books. They wanted only a precise number that fit their numerology again. And so was that all the books that may have actually fit some divine pattern that should be considered in the canon of scriptures that we review? And while I understand cutting off the scriptures related to direct people that had contact with Christ, the early recorders of those writings, there's some early church fathers that they're writing, Tertullian and others like him, have incredible observations that there's things that I might not agree with them on the their direct beliefs or understanding of things, but yet the value of their observations, even the mental gymnastics that they go through to arrive at certain conclusions, for somebody that's trying to dig deeper and to find the real meat, there's some bones in there that somebody else might be able to chew them down, but I can't.
Yeah, no, for sure. I absolutely, and I know that especially the early church fathers, I've been, my studies with all the missing gospels. I know a lot of the early church fathers as well were battling persecution. You look at what happened to Polycarp and his students, and even the apostles themselves were pretty much fugitives after Jesus was executed, basically. So there's a lot of human, I think, because we're so far removed from that time, a lot of people probably don't recognize or don't take the time to recognize that there's trauma there, and there's stress. There's unbelievable stress in these people's lives. And so I totally value that. And I've really enjoyed, I grew up Presbyterian, and you're grandfathered into things, and so you kind of ignore some stories. But just in this past year, just going through all of these different books and having discussions about them have really helped me as well. My faith has gotten stronger going through them. So I'll be and this Great Awakening too. I think many people in this Great Awakening have had a renewed sense of faith in God and faith in the divine. And faith in the numbers, that's because there you go. This is numbers, and it's like, wow, you can't even make this up. Like, this is so unbelievable and special.
Some numbers have come up actually in the last 5 minutes or so. So, Juan, you said you talked about Olympic. That comes to 93 in simple gematria, which comes to Flotus. It comes to kingship. It comes to Nazareth. It comes to my last name, Bushnell. So I always notice that. Then you mentioned Enoch. And Enoch comes to 45. And right at the beginning, I was saying how if you include the O, 107 comes to the spelling of the word 45. And then you spoke about Abraham. And Bryce has touched on it as well. So you said Abraham, and you said Abraham in regards to those that, I think you said father of the faithful. But the word faith comes to 44. Hope, interestingly enough, comes to 44. But Abraham comes to 44 as well. And the word chess, the great 5-dimensional chess game that President Trump and the alliance are playing, comes to 44. And you also mentioned Sarah, the wife of Abraham. And Sarah comes to 47, which is atomic silver. And we spoke about that right at the beginning. And you talked about how the value of silver is greatly suppressed. So there's some nice parallels there. And then you mentioned Joseph and Egypt. And you said about number, the power of numbers, but number, singular. So Egypt comes to 73. Joseph comes to 73. So think on that, Joseph in Egypt. And the word number comes to 73 as well. And you mentioned as well about the matrix. And if you spell the word matrix in simple gematria, it comes to 85, which also comes to the spelling of the word silver, S-I-L-V-E-R, comes to 85, and storm. So, you know, the storm is coming, and the storm is 85 as well.
Well, I might mention, the second edition of my book, Kid by the Side of the Road, just came out in the last few days, and they're just shipping it. I think yesterday was the first day they started shipping, and the third edition is in the works right now, and it'll be out sometime later in the summer, and with all new text in it, and that is called The Storm.
Oh, wow.
There you go.
Is that a clue as to when we're going to experience the storm upon us for real?
Yeah.
And by the way, let me just add this. It's important to remember that both sides are fighting to own the numbers in the most generic sense. Good and evil, Father God in heaven, and Satan, Lucifer, the devil, are both trying to own the numbers. And so you can hear a number and say, well, that's a good number. Oh, no, that's a bad number. Both sides are playing in this casino royale for planet Earth to own these specific numbers. So you can have a good application and an evil application of any of these numbers. And so just don't assume because you've seen a number, oh, it's good and it's something that's God's behind or something. There's a certain momentum both ways to own some of these. And the thing that I was thinking of specific, 4 is the number of foundation. And so when you see a 44, this is an attempt most of the time to institute a foundational thing. So, for example, faith is the foundation on which all of our spiritual life is based on. There's a faith aspect to that that's the foundation of everything that we're trying to do within our faith. And that's why Abraham was called the father of the faithful. And this 4-4. So you'll see that repeatedly with numbers, just like 17. Both sides are trying to own it. 17 is the death and resurrection date of Osiris. 17 in the Bible, Osiris, this occult group that's really all of this with religion in the Western world, Washington, D.C., etc., is built around the 17. So, for example, the Washington Monument is this monument in stone to Osiris' penis, and it's also Osiris's number is 17. Conversely, the 17th book of the Bible is the book of Esther, and that's the number of victory and reversals. And so there's a fight for the ownership of 17. So just little teeny things that people might find interesting there.
Yeah, definitely. And even in your name, so you said about the O, so phonetically, if you say 107, it's not the same as 107, we know that, but just hearing it, if you drop the O from 107, you drop the 0, you've got 17. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting. And you mentioned as well about
and there's some matrix things there naturally that someday we'll talk about, but they're amazing things there that are a lot of fun. So there's a natural and a manufactured. But anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
And you talked as well about Abraham and having offspring, as this, the sands of the seashore. So sand, S-A-N-D, comes to 38, which if you spell the word gold comes to 38 as well. So we've had quite a bit on gold and silver already. We started off with it and we've had it, talking in reference to this thing with Abraham and the matrix, etc. Something else as well, you said father. So father comes to 58, which also comes to Nessara, which is quite on point. It also comes to the word star, comes to Ivanka. It depends if people are into cryptos or not. The XRP, that coin comes to 58. But one of the things I wanted to bring you back to, one was I mentioned Christopher Nolan, the great film director. And I don't know if you've had a chance to see this, but last summer his film Tenet came out. And those that are regular viewers on my channel will know that I talk about this movie a lot, because I see that it's a playbook for where we're at right now. And one of the key themes, well, the word tenet in terms of belief, what do you believe? But the word tenet, when you spell it out in simple gematria, comes to 64, which comes to Israel, but it also comes to the word American, and it also comes to the word Jubilee. So I like the numbers and the symbolism of that. But one of the key things in that film is they talk about, there's a big reference to gold. There's also reference to time travel and reversing things, the reversal of things, restoring things. And they physically show that in terms of a device that they call a turnstile. And they make reference to it being they call it a pentagon. So it's a pentagon shape, but it's very subtle, the reference to pentagon. The word pentagon comes to 92, which comes to my nickname numbers. It comes to Watson, which is Bryce's last name. It also comes to Manhattan. But it comes to the word pentagon, 92, which also comes to the word reverse. So if you reverse something, it's actually simple gematria is 92. But the word turnstile comes to 138, which comes to Donald Trump, comes to Salt Lake City, comes to the pyramids. It comes to Dome of the Rock. We've seen some things there recently in Israel. It comes to Cyberstorm. It comes to River Thames as well. But if you add 138 plus 92, that takes you to 230. And interestingly enough, the film Tenet actually lasts for 2 hours, 30 minutes. So that's one way to show that. Or you could say 2 hours, 30 minutes also equals 150 minutes. And 150 comes to the phrase, pull the plug, which is in the film Terminator, but, draining the swamp, pulling the plug, etc. But I wanted to ask a specific question.
Let me just mention this also.
Yeah.
Before you do that, 23, anything that's branded with the number 23, events that are constructed to have 23 in them. 23, anything that has 23 in it is intended to affect the whole world. And remember, 23 chromosomes from each parent. Also, by the way, 29, when you see 29, that's any date, every date that has 29 in it is a chaos date. And there's mythology related to this goddess that causes chaos on the 29th. But also 29 is code for 9/11. 9 plus 2, 9, and then you add the 2, 11. And so you see that very frequently in these, it's a number that's used for communications. Remember, the language of the cabals that we're dealing with, these hidden societies, these secret societies, the language that they use is numbers. And so they communicate with each other with these numbers right in plain sight, and only the initiated understand what they mean. And then the numbers have different language divisions within them. So a Masonic cabal might not communicate using the numbers with the same meaning as a certain of the satanic or witches cabals, wizardry, etc. They may have little internal meanings. So, for example, when we say 93, Aleister Crowley said that the most holy number was 93. They're into reversals. The 93 is another way of saying 39. And the most powerful spells are spells that you magnify 3 times. That's the maximum amount that you can magnify a spell. So you take 39, you say, well, what if it's part of a spell, what would be the core base number? It'd be 13. There's 13 bloodline families. So 3 times 13 is 39. That's why you have Launchpad 39A and 39B in this myth of going to the moon. Well, why couldn't it have been 39 and 40? Because the magic, the numerology, it had to be branded with 39. So Launchpad 39A and 39B for this global branding of an idea, a mythos. In this, NASA is the most occult religious organization in the whole U.S. system. as a government entity. So anyway, just that little diversion, but I it's helpful for people maybe to kind of give them these little tidbits as we go. So sorry for interrupting your flow though.
Oh, that's cool. It's very enlightening. So number 23 as well equals I am. So you've got the whole thing of the great I am. And 29 comes to Diana, comes to August, AUG, just the abbreviation. And interesting enough, the power number that they make reference to in the Terminator film, which has just been re-released again, Terminator 2, August 29. And August 29 is day 241 of the year. And 241 is the algorithm that they're searching for in the Tenet film, which is interesting as well. So it all ties those things in. But I wanted to ask about, and also 90, you said 93, the flip of it, 39. 39 is the month of May. May, in simple gematria, equals 39, equals the number 10, and even Big Ben as well, which is in London. But I wanted to ask you specifically about any knowledge that you can share in terms of white hat, looking glass technology in terms of Alice. So the turnstile 138, Donald Trump, plus Pentagon 92 takes you to 230, which is the number of minutes in the film. You said about 23. So I'm wondering if you're able to share any knowledge about time reversal and how Junior and others have been using that to get us to this point in the chessboard where we're at. I'd love to pick your brain on that.
Well, the first thing, let me just say this. For anybody that questions whether or not time travel is possible, the Bible talks about time travel very clearly. Go to the book of Daniel. I spoke about it in a presentation I did over at Jennifer Mack's channel and another one at Space Shot 76 about Esther and the book of Esther. Mm-hmm. This moment in time we're in is about this reversal. In that book of Daniel, Daniel was praying about what would be the fate of the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the nation of the Jews, and what would be their fate out into the future, because they were in slavery at the time. Daniel himself being a slave and also being castrated, would never have children of his own. So what would happen to these children in slavery? And in this prayer and fasting period, God sent an angel, and that angel is said, the angel told Daniel directly that he had come from this future event across time, walking across time like we walk across the street. And the angel said, I just came from these future events back through time to you to tell you what is going to happen in your future and in the future of your nation, your people, your family. And so here the Bible is clearly talking about time travel, not just an understanding of what time would be in the future, like a prophecy or something. The angel said he came from that time back to Daniel. So within some spiritual sense, we can say that, from even a God perspective, it was not done in a predictive sense. It was a done deal. As that angel came back across time to talk with Daniel and give him that information, he was walking across time as a physical construct, every bit as much as Daniel was living in the time and space that he was in. The angel had come from a physical reality in the future to tell him about this, not a predicted vaporous thing. You get the intricacy of what I'm saying, the difference between those terms?
Yep.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So now if we have that as a premise, is time travel possible? Clearly it is. Is it something that we have the technology to do ourselves apart from some divine or angelic aspect? And you really get into the weeds on this. And of course, a lot of the sci-fi stuff goes into some of the intricacies of it. And it was one of Isaac Asimov, Sir Isaac Asimov's favorite areas to research, of course. And a lot of people don't realize here he's this unbelievable science fiction writer, I think the greatest of all time. He was also one of the greatest biblical scholars ever. And he wrote extensively from a biblical perspective, walked all the Holy Lands, read all of the books, researched everything. He's probably the most deeply read biblical scholar, perhaps in history. And with the only other one in my opinion being in the same zone is Alfred Edersheim, a German, who wrote Life and Times of Jesus Christ the Messiah, one of the great works ever. And but both of these men actually tell you indirectly that they believed that time travel, in a sense, was absolutely possible, but also reserved somehow to these to the divine entity, this God side and God's angels. That Satan and his angels did not have that same capability, that they were not able to walk across time like God's angels did. So the angel at Persia that the angel Michael encountered in coming to Daniel, the angel at Persia was an angel, a dark angel locked in time. And so he was there guarding and holding his position over Persia, which didn't exist in Daniel's time at the time the angel came to him. That was a future kingdom. And so those angels don't appear to be able to walk across time in the same way. And my to take that then to the present day, the present technology, this moment, there does appear, and there's a number of people that talk about it, and their work is pretty good, that talk about being able to slow time down, or the passage of time down inside of certain mechanical matrices by mechanical devices. And so outside the bubble, time would pass at a certain rate, and inside that bubble, it would pass at a different rate. And the reason this is important, let's say you're a leader in some country like here in the United States, and a crisis is erupting. There's a certain amount of time that you use just traveling from point to point, acquiring information, digesting it, and then coming up with responses to things. And so the contention has been by actually a fairly large number that we have the ability to create these locations where we have a bubble, and we can operate not slower, but technically faster inside that bubble. In the same space of time that would be an hour for you, we can physically operate, think, function several times faster than that, and get a day's work done in what to you appears to be an hour. My response to all of that, for all of those people that want to have that conversation, is this. We have a long history of messing with our enemies and opponents. And there's lots of things that are said in order to cause our enemies and opponents to waste time and money and resources trying to figure out how we've done stuff so that they can do it. Because if they believe it's possible because they've got intel that it's possible, then they would go try to duplicate, and they go down the wrong trail, wasting time and resources on something that's not factual. The converse of that is this. Let me just tell you a little story. There's a great sci-fi angle where the professors, the scientists, are gathered into a room in an area that uses a number for a name. And they're shown a film. And this film depicts we're just talking theory here, but I'm trying to get something through to your listeners. In this thing, they show these scientists that for want of a better term, just because your listeners will understand it's not accurate, but the term that people recognize, that anti-gravity travel is possible, and that you can make a device that makes gravity null and void, and you can float and fly and everything else due to anti-gravity. And so the scientists see this captured film from the enemy, and the enemy is testing this device, and it works really good. And you see the guy zoom up in the air, and he's floating around, and he's rocketing up and down and everything else, and comes back down. And the scientists all look at it and they go, "Oh, that's not possible. They can't possibly, the physics, it's not possible." It's like in the old days, they said that, people, one of the scientists claimed famously that a man couldn't travel faster than 60 miles an hour theoretically, because if he did, his heart would stop beating and he'd die, because the speed of a horse is only 30, and a jaguar could go 60, and nothing could go faster than that. Otherwise they'd have a heart attack and die. Well, that obviously wasn't true. So these scientists are in the room, they see this magical event, and then they have to go, well, but the spies and the film we saw show that it is true. So it must be possible. Well, if it is possible, how would they have done it? So they start crunching the numbers, and they start looking, and all of a sudden somebody gets a bright idea. Well, it could be that if you did this electrically, if you did that electrically, if you changed this field effect, etc., maybe you could do something. And so a period of time goes by, and all of a sudden they come back, and they can't do everything that the bad guys did, but they can lift something off in a few ounces, and they can float it around and come back down. Oh, well, now it's not that it's not possible. It's just the scale our enemies that are doing it is so much bigger than we can, but we've proven we can do it. Now we got to figure out how to do it better. And they keep working at it. And after a period of time, all of a sudden, they've perfected this ability to do anti-gravity. And they're all excited, and they show the bosses and everything else. And then now they've got anti-gravity. They can fly around like the enemy does. We're okay. We've got it. And then somebody tells them, well, actually, we made that up. It was just a green screen. It's all pretend, but you did it. They were fooled into believing their enemy could do something a certain way. So then they lost that mental stop that said it can't be done.
Right. Yeah.
And then they went and did it. And let me add this from a biblical perspective. At the Tower of Babel, all of the people came together. They spoke one language, and God looked down on them and saw that they were building this tower to the heavens, which is another name for a space program. And God himself said that nothing which they imagined would be impossible to them. And so he confused the languages so that they couldn't communicate one with another. And then they had to disperse, and they abandoned their project. Now, all of that to say this, coming back to the numbers. In our time, the very thing that God did to confound and confuse those people from that era from moving forward with their space program to leave planet Earth, to leave the prison planet and get back to wherever they thought they wanted to get to, was to confuse their languages. In our era, we have defeated this move or act of God to confound our ability to communicate one with another across all the peoples of the earth. And what is the now common language between all of us across the planet? It's not computers, if you will. It's numbers, ones and zeros. And so we have converted our language into a computer code where we put it in, we put it in certain terms, and then we can bring it back out, and I can talk to you, you can talk to me. Through the computer, we put our languages in completely separate, and we can communicate back and forth. We have defeated the confusion of the languages back at Babel. So then I go to one step further. God himself said that nothing which they imagined
Impossible.
would be impossible to them. So do you say that time travel is possible?
Yeah.
I think it's possible, but my contention would be we're not quite there. We're at the edge of many of these things. There may be some ability to manipulate the rate of time for us. It's not quite the same as the situation with Michael walking across time. And I think that still is reserved away from us. There may be some toying with everybody to get them off on, certain things. We are being trolled. All sides are being trolled and taken off point. Both the good guys and the bad guys. And it's just part of this broad strategy in this fight we're in right now. So I hope that's not too all over the place for people, but just give you some.
That's great. Great.
Awesome. Totally.
You said about the time bubble. Was there a name for that when they were trying to describe that time bubble? Because I did the numbers on that one, and time is 47, which is John. Bubble, interesting enough, is 44, which is Abraham, which is faith. And you add those together, comes to 91, which comes to POTUS, comes to liberty, comes to the Father, and it also comes to Space Force. And you're talking about, building a tower.
Well, and let me just add this.
Or with the space program, So
let me just add this with the Space Force. Nothing in the term Space Force that says outer space.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
What space are we talking about controlling?
Yeah.
Yep.
Inner space. And space is 44 as well. It's Abraham.
Yes.
It's bubble. It's anti. Yeah, very good point. Yeah. Antigravity as well is
well, let me just add this. Satan, the devil, he's called the prince of the power of the air. And there is a restriction down to the edge of the air, or where the air can go, related to that force and power. And so when you can go beyond the air, you have a different realm of power, and now you're out into the realm of the Watchers, etc. So there's quite a few things in there that are really, we'd lose too many of the listeners, but that are certainly a very fun conversation that can be had, and maybe out in the future we'll have it.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love that. So you're talking about, in terms of, are you talking about kind of beyond the firmament then, or,
That's what I was thinking. The firmament is mentioned so many times in the Bible. Is that what you're saying, that we're in a firmament, we're in like a bubble ourselves in this planet?
Yeah. It's not, let me just say this. I'll have all the flat earthers going crazy right now. And let me just tell you that the whole flat earth thing was funded. In fact, one of the disciples of Crowley is Michael Aquino, this person in the U.S. Army who has a very dark history. And he himself has acknowledged that he received a tremendous amount of money for funding to promote the idea of the flat earth as it was part of a tracking operation to map suggestibility and the ability to maneuver or manipulate people in the internet to convey and pass on certain ideas, and to find who those choke points were for information that then pass it on, these nodes, these people, influencers. And so this whole flat earth thing, for all that people get all excited and they think they've learned something, was part of a information tracking operation that was funded by DARPA out into the internet community. And so how much did it have to do with any reality? Bullshit. Okay, on the physics, on the real stuff, there's all sorts of fun, interesting stuff there. But the reality is, if you want to get right down to it, go back to Enoch And Enoch, his travel up from the earth and out into the solar system and beyond, it's amazing. The Book of Enoch, which is an ancient writing, shows the revolutions, the rotations, all of the physics at the minutia subatomic level, the atomic level, and out through the celestial solar system and galactic. It's rotation, and that goes to the other physics also. Is all based on this rotation and this the interlocking influence effects, field effects of these bodies at the subatomic level, all the way through galactic level. It's the same principle all the way through. I prefer the term torsion. There's 100 different terms depending on how you're doing it and who's trying to own it, but it's the same. A rose by another name is still a rose. Okay,
Right.
You call it whatever name you want, whatever language you want. It's still a rose. Okay, the other physics, it has a very specific set of principles, ways that it works. Different scientists have mapped different aspects of it. It's like reaching into the box and you say the elephant is long and slinky. Well, you got his tail. You say it's like a tree trunk. Well, you got his foot. It's very floppy. Well, you got its ear. It's the same elephant. You're just looking at it from different locations. The other physics, the subatomic physics, the dark matter, some people want to call it 0 point. Some people use other terms. I prefer, as I said, torsion, but it's this other physics that's the basis for the other energy systems. And if you want to go into time travel, is the core to why it works the way it does. And as you traverse, it's not that things are bigger in this other realm, it's infinitely smaller. And as you traverse that Planck length limitation and get to the subatomic, now you do not have a light speed restriction. In the matter and above level, in this blown up popcorn type of a physics, with great distances between the nucleus and the electrons, etc., and the Planck length 2/8 of an electron, theoretically. Now you're restricted to the speed of light. In the subatomic level, you do not have a light speed restriction, and now all the physics changes in that dark matter realm. It's not that it's not matter. It's not the not matter realm. It's the dark matter, because it's matter smaller than an electron and operating within different principles, and it's much denser than it's what we're swimming in, and that it's still matter. It's just very, very fine, small matter, so fine that with our tools that are at the atomic level, we can't grasp it. We can't work with it. We can't manipulate it because our matter-sized tools from an electron and larger are too clumsy. They're too big. And so we have to look at the effects and the stuff and manipulate it via fields. And we see a field effect from it. And with fields, we can affect it and manipulate it. And that's where you get these other vehicles, if you will, using waveguides to then achieve very high velocities and maneuverability and stuff like that.
Wow.
Wow. I saw some other things popped up then, one when you're talking. So when we said about anti-gravity, that comes to 146, which comes to New Jerusalem, comes to Ivanka Trump, it comes to Father Trump, but it also comes to Leonardo da Vinci. And he, there's diagrams of his work of, helicopters, etc., kind of being made kind of mechanically back then. But also when you were talking about time travel, so the word time is 47, which is John. Travel comes to 78, which is Kennedy. So makes me think of John Kennedy. And that word comes to those words come to 125 again, which takes us back to the Pentagon. So Pentagon is 92. The is 33, takes you to 125. I just wonder.
Let me just add one thing. The Pentagon, of course, the Pentagon here is 5-sided.
Yes.
The foundation for the Pentagon here in the U.S., the foundation was dug ceremonially on 9/11, 1942. And of course, then it was struck on 9/11 by the missile. And of course, the 29 being goddess of chaos, but also code for 9/11.
Wow.
So you see those repeating over and over again, and you wonder how much of it is, the matrix in the background, and how much of it is engineered and intentional because people are branding things for their own purposes.
Yeah. Also, as well, on 9/11, so September, the word September comes to 103, which comes to Solomon, comes to Princess, comes to Jack Kennedy, and it also comes to the latest one we had was last year. People might think I'm woo on this, but I hope perhaps maybe there's a way that even the original JFK may be with us in some form. But if he was alive, he would have been 103 years old on that day. Sorry, not that. Yeah, he would have been that age. But also the word 11 comes to 63, which takes you back to what happened back in Texas in 63 with him. So it does make you wonder, how much of this is. It does make you wonder. It's very interesting. I didn't know that about the 1942 September 11th. Well,
and the other thing is just for one other thing, just because we're there, and it is a core thing. The 9/11 event is very important for people to remember. That was those towers were built by the Rockefeller brothers, Nelson Rockefeller specifically, being core to the building of the Twin Towers and that whole complex in there. When he did his article with Newsweek magazine in, I believe it was 1967, when they were nearing completion, that was the first interview he'd had in a long time on this, and it was interesting that the date that was chosen for the release of that Newsweek interview was 9/11 of 1967 for the dedication of the Twin Towers.
Wow.
And then the other thing people need to remember, that was a ritual. It was done in a very precise location, and all of the buildings around the Twin Towers have ritual meaning. So, for example, the Twin Towers are the two towers from Masonic lore. I can't remember what one's whatchamacallit and the other one's Boaz. And that is actually a pathway or a gateway. It has ritual meaning like a birth canal. And so for the spiritual to enter the physical, what was happening over the towers on 9/11 when the towers were attacked and then collapsed, this gateway between the spiritual and the physical realm was collapsed to allow this transit of demon spirits, if you will, in this world, or God spirits. What was happening above that was that in the heavens above, Virgo was birthing. Now, the importance of that is that you could not have had the ritual meaning of 9/11 on 9/10 or 9/12. It had to be that specific date. This was planned for a long time. And by the way, knowing that this date was critical, first off, 9/11, 3 BC is the true birth date of Christ. He wasn't born in December. He was born in September. He was born 9/11, 3 BC. Now that's relevant because they had to villainize the birth date of Christ from the Bible. And then also this birthing this spirit realm into our world of this chaos and manipulation and control. They had to re-own those numbers on the 9/11. And that branding had been occurring for a long time. By the way, all through these Catholic structures, buildings within the Catholic Church for over 1,000 years. You've seen, including at the Vatican and other places, IXXI. Well, what's that in Roman numerals? That's 9/11. And then around the Twin Towers in New York, for example, the Statue of Liberty given to America by the French Masonic Society. Well, what do they say it is? They say it's ISIS.
Mm-hmm.
So the Statue of Liberty is Isis with an eternal flame in her hand. So you have a spiritual aspect to that. She's this goddess that everybody's excited here in America, but you have Isis, the goddess, that's there in New York Harbor with this eternal flame, and she's a witness. And Isis is who? She's the mother of Osiris.
Mm-hmm.
She's also the mother of Horus, because when the myth is that when Osiris was killed, Osiris was this evil god. The story is in the Sumerian and Babylonian text that Isis was raped by Zeus, and she had 2 sons. Set, which was a very good son, and very, good to the people, the mere humans or whatever around. And Osiris, who was very evil and was very destructive and mean to all the humans around in this god world. So on one particular day, Set went out and killed Osiris and chopped him into 14 pieces and scattered the pieces across the whole world. When Isis, his mother, found out that the brother had killed him, she raced out around the world. Of course, being a god, you can do this kind of stuff. And she picks up all the pieces and comes out and assembles them all in one place. And then she realizes that she's only got 13 of the 4 pieces of Osiris, the 14th piece being his penis. And so she fashioned a penis out of stone because the penis was supposedly eaten by a fish. Okay, well, she can find the fish. She can find all the other pieces. She can't find the penis, whatever. So she fashions a penis out of stone. She makes a dildo. And then she has sex with her own son's corpse. Well, they're gods. They do weird stuff. So she becomes pregnant in the myth as a result of having sex with her son's corpse. And because she doesn't want his line to be extinguished, to expire. She wants the evil to stay alive. This evil god son of hers, she wants it to stay alive. Well, whatever. So when she has a child, the child is named Horus. Horus is the sun god. Mm-hmm. These people that we're fighting are literally sun worshipers, not the Son of God, Christ, but the sun in the heavens, a very physical God. They worship the rising sun. And in the Bible, in 2 Kings, it talks about where the worshipers of Horus had tower monuments to their tower god in the Holy of Holies in Jerusalem. And what are those? They're phallic symbols. They're monuments in stone, just like the Washington Monument. They're tower god representations, the big penises right there in the Holy of Holies. And God was, livid over it, and that the blended religion. And so, he's cursing them, and he raises up a king who goes in and pulls all of them out and has them burnt and destroyed down by the Brook Kindred or whatever. And because the priests had morphed in their religion, they were turning their asses to the throne of God, and they were bowing to the rising sun, putting their asses towards God inside the Holy of Holies. The people weren't seeing it because it's protected. It's inside the tent. But behind the scenes, They weren't worshiping the God in heaven. They were sticking their ass in his face, and they were bowing to Horus. And this occult religion, this hidden religion, is taking place in plain sight. Out during the day, the priests are walking around amongst the people, and they're all the holy ones and all. And behind the scenes, they're worshiping this occult God that had nothing to do with the God of the Israelites. And God hated that. Well, that tower god, that monument, the Isis Osiris mythology is present today right here in America. The entire federal system running America is built around this great big huge dildo, this fuck you, this penis right in the middle of Washington, D.C. that's the center of the national city of America. And it's a great big fuck you, not just to America, but to the whole world. So, and it's all related to this occult thing. When you look at all the buildings in New York around the Twin Towers, you've got all the 42 gods of the Greek mythology presented there. You've got the bull down there in Wall Street. You've got all those buildings have specific meanings hidden in plain sight. All the gods were present symbolically with their mythology, watching the Twin Towers go down. As above, so below. What was going on above in the heavens exactly during the hours when 9/11 happened, when the planes were hitting the buildings and the buildings were falling down, and the spiritual veil between the spiritual and the physical world was symbolically being brought down. Up above, in the skies above, Virgo was birthing. And remember what George Bush Jr. was doing at the time? He's reading the goat story to the kids, because he was narrating while the actual event was going on, which was this birthing goat. And by the way, over in Europe, for some of the rest of your listeners, go back to the tunnel dedication ceremony with this tunnel, this long, huge tunnel. And what do they got? They got the dancing goat, and the strangest, most bizarre opening ceremony you've ever seen in your whole life. It's all about the goat. These religions, this occult religion, is being practiced right in front of you by your leaders in plain sight, because they are bringing in this occult spiritual realm into our world. From their positions of leadership, they are mutually self-promoting each other behind the scenes and practicing their religion in plain sight. And you think they're the high priests of politics and finance and everything else, and they bless this financial thing, and we're going to take care of the country, this and that. They're practicing their religion in plain sight. Behind the curtain, they're sticking their ass in the face of God. They're laughing at you as Christians, as believers. And they're practicing their religion at your expense, right in plain sight, as they take over your country, your land, the world. One last thing, let me just add this in this context. What was Hillary going to do? What was she all excited to do in the last days of her campaign in 2016? She was all excited because they were going to bring the Arch of Baal, B-A-A-L, to America. And she wanted to do a speech in the Arch of Baal just prior to the election in 2016. What is the Arch of Baal? The Arch of Baal was at the gateway to the city of Baal and the Temple of Baal. Where was the Temple of Baal located? Baal is how some people say it. It's in the Bible. The Baal worshipers were the ones that were on top of the hills around the city of Jerusalem and around the country. And on these hills, they would have fires. And these fires were dedications to Baal. They had the statue of Baal up there. And the scripture says that they made their children to pass through the fire. What that's very church, okay? That's very mainstream media. Oh, well, they made their kids pass through the fire, and this, so on. No, they sacrificed their children to Baal by roasting them in the fires.
Yep.
It was a sacrifice of their children to Baal, the god Baal. And the god Baal was worshipped in the temple of Baal, just inside Baal's gate, that was located at the base of Mount Hermon.
Mm-hmm.
Mount Hermon is the location where the 200, according to Sumerian legend, according to Babylonian legend, the 200 gods fell to earth and landed at the top of Mount Hermon. And the highest altitude world historical site recognized by the UN as an ancient ruin. The highest altitude ancient ruin on planet Earth is at the top of Mount Hermon, where the 200 are claimed to have landed. And they descended down off the mountain, had their temple there dedicated to Baal, their god person, and the people would have to come and bring sacrifices to Baal in order to have a good harvest, in order to stay alive, etc. So this satanic empire started there. So Hillary wanted to do a speech from the Arch of Baal dedicated to a god that's all about child sacrifice, and we're supposed to think that that's okay? Are you kidding me? So for those that think maybe, my talk about this phallic symbol and all this other stuff is over the top, they're still practicing it right in plain sight. This fight that we're seeing in the political realm right now, remember, WikiLeaks is still relevant and valid. What was in the leaked WikiLeaks papers, which, by the way, was not done by a Russian hack? You could not transfer data at the rate that it says it was transferred in the metadata within the material from the WikiLeaks. The metadata being stuff that tells you how rapidly the information was recorded on the digital device. It could only have been done directly at the computer. A person had to be in the room with the computer, put the recording device right onto the computer and download it. That's why Seth Rich is still relevant. It wasn't done by hackers. Nobody in the world could have hacked it over the wires available at the time, because that technology still doesn't exist now to move it over the wire at that speed at great distance through the telephone interchanges remotely, etc. A person had to be physically in the room. It wasn't Russian hackers. And what was in that WikiLeaks data? The WikiLeaks data is the communication, including Podesta, Hillary's campaign manager, talking about going to spirit cooking dinners where they ritually celebrated the eating of human flesh. Okay? Child sacrifice, human sacrifice, other stuff. You can say, well, they weren't actually doing that, but they were having fun talking about it. It was ritually talked about. Okay, well, they were ritually talking about it. They were ritually talking about human sacrifice. That's not the religion that Christians in the rest of the world want practiced in plain sight. They were sticking their asses in your face and laughing at you. Okay? So this fight we're in right now is actually really very much so a fight for good over evil, back and forth. And the language between the opponents, us and them, is the language of numbers, because we've reached this moment in history where via the numbers, via the computers, the communications have been restored and are being built out to defeat that moment at Babel. And once this war is over right now, the victors will return to the stars. Yeah.
Juan, thank you, man. It's been a real honor and pleasure, and we'll have to definitely do this again. And some of the things you just raised, I just quickly noticed some numbers on it. So you were talking about the World Trade Center. If you do the gematria on World Trade Center, it comes to 185, which comes to Donald John Trump, comes to Book of Revelation. just across the water from there. So you can think energetically that they were after him back then, but we're going into the time of reversal and good overcoming darkness. So if you go across the water, you've got Statue of Liberty there, which you mentioned again. Statue of Liberty comes to 198 in simple gematria, which comes to President Trump, and it comes to the resurrection. So we're all anticipating with excitement his return, his resurrection.
Yes, and you also praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord, bring it on. And you also mentioned Virgo, which was fascinating. So I did the numbers on Virgo. Virgo comes to 77, which comes to Moses, comes to Flynn, comes to Suez, comes to my channel, Psych.Club, comes to Lady Diana. And you said about the birthing of Virgo. So birth is 57, which is Moon, which is Tesla, which is Swan, which is England. Birthing takes you to 87, which is Stella, which is Truth. But if you do the birthing of Virgo, takes you to 179, which comes to the New Jerusalem. We spoke about that. But if you do reverse birthing, so reverse 92, Manhattan, Pentagon, reverse birthing comes to 179 as well. So perhaps all of these things, like you said, it's the good versus darkness, and all these things that they've done are being reversed and are in the process of reversal and God winning. So, and then the other one as well, World Trade Center. So it's now called one World Trade Center. It used to be two, it used to be World Trade Center, and it was two buildings representing 185 Donald John Trump. It makes me think of POTUS, the father, and 18 and 138 real Donald Trump. But if you do one World Trade Center, the word one is Neo, Matrix, but it's also DJT, 34. But you add those together, 185 plus 34 takes you to 219. One World Trade Center comes to the Mount of Olives. And Q's always saying everything's going to be biblical. So it's fascinating, the things you've done. And it's been like brain candy. So thank you. Much appreciated, buddy. And we want to do it again. Where can people find your new book? We're going to put the links in the video one. Where can people find you?
It's over at gumroad.com, and I'll send you a link, and you can include it with what you're doing. This is the first copies of the second edition that just came out. You can see, in fact, it's very important. You'll see that Melania is on the back cover, and all of these. Yeah. For those that have the first edition, look at that cube and remember the first edition on every single page had that cube. That's what it looks like. Notice the color is the same.
Her name's 55 equals heaven.
That's the dress that Melania wore as she was returning home to Mar-a-Lago on her last day as FLOTUS on January 20th of 2021. That was her dress. And you know what she was telling you? That's all code for election 2020 isn't over, and we're going to be celebrating and dancing in the street at some point in time. And so it's not over. So it matches what was in the first edition of the book. The first edition sold out. In fact, they're going for quite a bit more than I sent them out for, which is fun. And but the second edition is just amazing. It'll only be out for a short while, and because the Storm edition is coming. So
awesome.
People, I hope will enjoy it, and it's quite beautiful. We've already sold a big percentage of what we had printed. So anyway.
Everyone on the channel, check it out. Check out one book. And also, if you're interested in doing the numbers, I've got a digital audio course and workbook called Trumpology, which is going well as well. So
one thing too. Let me just mention one thing too. If your people haven't watched it, if you go over to Rumble and
to your film, the
film is so fun. The Makings for a Perfect Day, and it's on YouTube and other stuff. That's actually been viewed about 3 million views total in all the various platforms. But of course, you Brits will enjoy the fact that I drive my Aston Martin in the movie, and it's a lot of fun. And I really enjoy that car. I've got I can't drive it now because I'll get pulled over too many times. Everyone will wave and stop me. But so it'll be in the museum somewhere. But I actually am going to send it out with a bus tour that's going out across the country and have it stopped a couple of times and let folks get a chance to see it. But now I'm just driving my Bentleys, and that's about it. I've got several Bentley convertibles, so I have a great appreciation for you folks over there with the brick cars. And by the way, Jennifer Mack's doing the follow-on to that movie, and has already started filming on that, and it has another British car in it, and people are going to get a great big huge kick out of that. Anyway, go watch the Call of the Nations for a perfect day.
Juan, thank you, buddy. It's been a real pleasure. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much, Juan. I cannot wait to do this again. I've really just been in awe of all your knowledge, and I love all your Bible knowledge, and I know my audience is going to love this, so I cannot wait to talk to you again. All right. Well, I appreciate it. All right. And by the way, I'm actually doing a private showing today here in DC. Boy, what a beautiful day it is out there. The clouds are coming through. I don't know if you can see that. I'm actually doing a private viewing today of Sound of Freedom, and another one over in Texas here next week, private one. And Jim Caviezel's with me. We're getting some of the funding for the marketing side of the movie out of the way, but I'm anxious for people to see that. The child trafficking issue is the most important issue on the planet in many ways right now. There's more people in slavery today than ever in human history, and most of them are children. And so that's where my efforts are at for the foreseeable future. On the political side and getting back control of our country here in America, it's critical. We're going to do that, and then we're going to come back out and help the rest of the world, not being our brother's keeper, but being our brother's brother, starting with the children. And it's the most important thing. The Sound of Freedom movie is an amazing movie. I'm looking forward to having that out early part of next year. And that's one of the things I'll look forward to talking about when we get closer to it. So there you go, folks. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Juan. God bless.
Thanks, Bryce. Take care, guys. Speak soon. God bless. Thank you.
Bye.